Okay, so have now spent some time getting ready to unplug. But it's not just us. We're going to need to get our office ready for us as well. And in order to do that, we're going to need some predefined interactions or ways that we're going to be able to interact with our office while we are not available, out of town, on vacation, however we choose to be spending that time. To have as a backdrop for this particular section, I thought I would use this cityscape. I'm going to include the the photographer credits in the notes for each of these modules. To be honest, I don't even know what city this is, but I just think this is an amazing photo. So what do we need to think about while we're thinking about our office in terms of us being out of the office and being on vacation?
The key to having a successful system is to let the people in the system know what's going on. I don't know about you, but I can become very frustrated when I'm playing some sort of game or something's going on and I don't know all the rules. So instead, we're going to flip that on its ear when it comes to getting out of the office. If we have a major set of clients or vendors or people that we deal with often, we're going to tell them ahead of time. Not only I'm not going to be in the office for this period of time, but any questions that you have, ask this person. Deal with it in these ways. Even if you don't have a person to refer them to, and I'll talk about this a little bit in the next section, you can say, I'm only going to be checking my emails at these times, and I'm only going to be making phone calls at these times. And even little steps like that will allow you to get out of the office and will allow you to train the people who you feel need the most attention to be able to respond and get information to you. So if you do need to make decisions, you can. And if you don't need to be involved, that you've already automated the process and allowed things to happen while you're out of the office. Make a stand and stand your ground.
So the first step in standing your ground is, well, I'm stealing an idea from back in college. You may not have gone to college, but you probably know what office hours are. They're a very useful tool, and they have some very good applicability here.
You may remember that you have this lecture and you have hundreds of people in the class, but the professor or the teaching assistant has predefined office hours, a couple of hours a week, usually between 2 and 4, depending on the class, where they will be in their office and anybody who has a question can come by. You should do the same sort of thing. Depending on the type of business you're in, the state of the various projects you're involved with, and the need to communicate with you often or not so often, you should have office hours every day or every other day. If you have them every day, I would keep them kind of short. If you have them every other day, you have to remember that you didn't have them yesterday, so you're having them today. And you can have them you can make it a little bit longer.
So if you put that in play and you have these office hours set, well, what do you do with those times? The key is to make sure your direct reports know that this is the time that they can contact you. This is the time to bring the issues that you have to you. But you also need to have time where people who may not necessarily be able to be in your direct line, but need to talk to you because of an emergency or something else has come up, that they also know that this is a time to reach you. In terms of breaking down those times, I would say that you probably want to spend 70 to 80% of the time dealing with scheduled appointments with your direct reports, and the rest of the time you want to be flexible with regard to who you're dealing with. The key is having a plan where people know when to reach you and where, even if those people are not your direct reports.
It, Things become less of an emergency when I know that I'm going to talk to you in the next 24 hours. If your administrative assistant receives a call, someone in the office receives a call, that you should be answering, that only you know the answer to. What's the price going to be for this new product? How are we going to be able to complete the bid in time for the July start date? Whatever the question is, the person who receives the phone call, who is in your organization and will need to talk to you, can say to the person making the call, he's out of town, she's not available, can I call you back tomorrow with the answer? And then, when at the regularly scheduled time, the following morning, later that day, whenever it is, they can talk to you and get that answer. That will provide some structure. It'll provide a way where you are not constantly sitting by the phone wondering, oh my gosh, what's happening? Is this happening? Is that big bid? Are there questions about the big bid? Whatever it is, it allows you to be able to actually deal with the underlying. Now, admittedly, having a set time for the person in the office to call you, or for you, if you don't have a person, for you to check your voicemail only at a certain time every day, or respond to emails only at a certain time every day, that's not that shocking of advice. But here are three nuances, three additional things to be considering so that you can make this the best process and something that will improve your productivity when you get back to the office and then from there into the future. The first is that perfection is not the standard that you are trying to achieve. Understand that if you set office hours and you've got something where you try to reach somebody at 9, like you're answering voicemails and you call that person back, they may not be available. You may have to step away later. If you answer emails or the person isn't quite ready for you, or if a call comes in at 9:10 and you had already checked in at 9 and they need an answer by the end of the day, they may have to call you again. But again, having this in place allows you to at least have a standard where you are not going to be bothered except in a controlled way while you're on your vacation. The second point, which is also important, is to have whoever is managing these interruptions, these check-ins, to keep a log of what you discussed. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you're checking emails, keep in your head, or it's much better actually if you write it down, what topics you had to work on while you were gone. It often helps to list clients and what the project is that you're working on. Why are you doing that? Because you want to be able to come back and say, it seems to me that this was a consistent issue. This was something that I had to deal with often while I was gone. Now, it may seem like I'm not going to forget if I had something interrupting me. You'd be surprised. And again, it helps if you're writing it down that you can begin to see patterns. Which brings me to my third point. The third point, which this implies, is could this series of questions, this issue that I've had to deal with, could it have waited until I get back to the office? Hopefully, after training, the answer will be no, that I needed to deal with it while I was on vacation. But even if the answer is no, and I needed to deal with it, if you consistently notice in this list that you've created that the same types of issues come up, then you get to ask yourself a more fundamental question, and that is, how do I manage, delegate enough responsibility, or otherwise manage the situation so that no, could it have waited? No, becomes a yes. Could it have waited? Yes. Because I've put a process in place that will allow the situation to be resolved automatically, not automatically, but automatically as in without your input, without your direct involvement, because you've already handled those issues before I come back to the office.
So those are some thoughts about how to interact with your office. We are going to move on to the next module, but before we do, take a look at the sample documents that I've included with this module, which I hope will help you implement some of the things that we've been talking about during this module. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next module.